Hello, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Collective Spotlight. Really excited for today's guest. It's the pick of the week. It's a guy we've had on the show before. Um, uh, Without any further ado, and later on I'll plug the convention we have going on and everything. But without any further ado, let's get right to it. Writer of Red Goblin, All Against All, and Giga, Alex Paknadel. Alex,
Hey, how you doing? I'm okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm in the UK. It's everything's kind of winding down here, but I know you guys have just got started. But yeah, launch day. It's exciting time. Thanks for finding the time.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for giving us the time. The current, and you've been actually the last month you've been in comic book stores. At least your name has been in comic book stores a lot because Giga came out a couple weeks ago. All Against All 3 is today as well. And then we have Red Goblin 1. Talk to me just real quick about what it's like to have that many books in a comic book store at once.
I mean, for me, like it's personally gratifying. I mean, if you don't like my stuff, I mean, it's probably a lousy month. But yeah, no, it's funny, man. I mean, particularly, I know, we're all kind of much more kind of out and about now, but with the pandemic and everything, we've all been kind of in our tool sheds making stuff, and then the stars align in a certain way, and then it all kind of drops at once. All these sort of various strands. But yeah, I mean, it's lovely to see, and then you sort of look at it, and you look at that sort of array of work on the shelves, and you go, oh, like that's why I'm tired. Okay.
It's been cool, man. Again, because I know Giga had a little bit of a hiatus there in the middle too, so it was cool to see you come back and then come back in full force because it was All Against All kind of launched, then Giga came back, and now you have Red Goblin, and it's like, man, Alex really hit 2023 at full force.
But like, I genuinely, like, hand to God, like I mean, that issue of Giga was written 2 years ago, I think. It's just weird timing, it's like waiting for a bus. You wait 3 hours for one, and then three show up at once.
Yeah. So let's talk about our pick of the week this week is Red Goblin #1, written by you. There's a lot of Spider-Man stuff on the shelves right now, some in continuity, some Elseworld. The last time we saw Red Goblin was at the tail end of the previous Amazing Spider-Man run, where that was a big thing. Where does your story take place? How much of it is in canon? And how much did you have to talk to the previous writers and the creator, like the guys who started with Red Goblin, to put this all together?
Sure. I mean, it's all canon. This is all. It's not a dream, true believer. So yeah, it's all canon. It's all in current continuity, and it's kind of it's an interesting book in the sense that it's run out of like the symbiote side of editorial, so it's kind of run out of like the Carnage and Venom office. Okay. But obviously, because it has very kind of deep links to the Spider-Man side of things, it's also kind of a sister book to Gold Goblin.
Okay.
So, okay. I mean, just to sort of fill your viewers / listeners in, it's basically so the original Red Goblin was basically the Carnage symbiote bonded to Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin.
Yes.
Which is, quite a terrifying prospect because it's like two of the most evil forces in the Marvel universe teaming up and going on a sort of murder spree. And one of the more kind of messed up things that Norman did when he was the Red Goblin was to kind of, give his grandson, Normie, a bit of the Carnage symbiote to turn him into a sort of like lethal sidekick that tried to kill Aunt May, called the Goblin Child. And there's no kind of question of accountability because it was basically Carnage just kind of using Normie like a meat puppet. But ever since, Normie's had a kind of piece of symbiote codex in him. So, that's sort of the DNA imprint of having had a symbiote. And the way things have shaken out recently is that, Dylan, Normie's kind of best frenemy, I guess, is now Venom.
Yes.
And as part of their kind of recent team up, Dylan has basically given Normie a symbiote of his very own, and this symbiote is not the Carnage symbiote. It's like a cocktail of symbiotes that was sort of cooked up, and so for all intents and purposes, it's like a baby symbiote. And for some reason, and we'll kind of get into that, when he wears the symbiote, the shape that it goes to is the shape of the Red Goblin, which is the thing that like Normie's kind of ostensibly, it's the shape he's like most frightened of in the whole world. So, he becomes the stuff of his own nightmares. But like the symbiote itself is, I mean, the analogy that I kind of use is that it's like, and this, I suppose, is sort of, I like to think, this is like the sort of thematic through line for the whole thing, is that it's like he's got like a Rottweiler puppy. Like it's the story, if you peel it all away, it's the story of a kid and a Rottweiler puppy. And basically, if he raises this Rottweiler puppy right, it'll be a good dog. If he raises this Rottweiler puppy badly, it'll be a nightmare. And so like that's really the kind of that's the emotional core, the emotional and sort of thematic core of the book, is like, how does this kind of 12-year-old who's like far older than his years, some people have kind of commented online like, man, like, the narration like is pitched like slightly older than like a middle school kid. And I did that very intentionally, because the thing is, like, this is the grandson of the Green Goblin. Like his dad died in like Marvel time, like a few months ago. Yeah. And he's just like, his family life is like a nightmare, right? So he's kind of older than his years, and he's suddenly still at middle school been given this kind of, his best friend's given him this responsibility. It's like, here's this like unstoppable alien engine of destruction, like, go away and have fun. Like, don't screw it up.
Giving the kid
and
symbiote Ferrari.
Yeah, 100%. And so like that is really, where we kind of enter. And it's like, in terms of which way he's going to swing, it's like, this kid it's the grandson of the Green Goblin and the godson of Spider-Man. So like, which way is he going to jump?
And so it's a Normie specific book, which again, if people didn't read that previous run, it like you said, he ends up being Norman's kind of his little minion, his mini-me, if you will, with that. So it's a Normie book. Now, is Normie sitting on anti-hero? Is he a villain? Like, obviously he's the star of the book. It's tough to say villain, but are we sitting on anti-hero or like, is it still to be determined?
Well, to me, like, it's a really human book, because and this is not like, particularly on the sort of more in the kind of Spider-Man column than anything. I think it's just with sort of, it's more kind of horror inflected. So that sort of Spider-Man thing tends to sort of go a bit kind of grodier than it would normally. But what I'm really sort of leaning into here is like, Normie 100% wants to be like a superhero. So, I mean, there's preview pages online, so I'm not giving too much away. I mean, one thing that's like abundantly clear from, I think within 2 pages is that even from the way that he's kind of, the shape that he's forcing the symbiote to adopt, he's very much trying to just be Spider-Man, right? So like on the first couple pages, there's no like teeth or anything, and he's got, like the hero pose, like the Spider-Man hero pose, and the eyes and whatnot. And there's just like little hints of kind of goblininess that like when the symbiote feels threatened, kind of manifest, right? But as far as Normie's concerned, you know, his whole deal is like, you know, I've been trusted with this great, you know, with this great power. So obviously, you know, great responsibility. Let's not stray too far from the formula. But the problem that he has is he's desperately trying to be Spider-Man, but like his ride, if you like, you know, the mechanism by which he's trying to be Spider-Man, you know, wants to like eat brains and like eat a ton of chocolate, you know, and basically just like be an agent of chaos. Um, so they're constantly having, there's like a tug of war going on between them the whole time, but also like this weird kind of affection as well. Like it's this whole thing where like, you know, he's got this kind of symbiote that, you know, can absolutely kind of tear through, you know, 5-inch thick, you know, steel plating, but is terrified of Normie's mom because Normie's terrified of his mom. You know what I mean? It's I'm having like a genuine, like I'm having a ton of fun with it, and I hope it's all on the page. And Jan Bazaldua, I think, has like drawn the absolute heck out of it. You know, they're extraordinary. And like the dynamism, yeah. Like, sorry, I shouldn't. I know, like, you know, I might be kind of overselling my own book, but like genuinely, like I'm just having a blast on this.
No, and it's beautiful, clean art. I mean, it's exactly what people would expect from. I hate to use this term, but a AAA book. You know, I mean, Marvel and the Goblins and the symbiotes. That it doesn't get. And I'm not trying to inflate your ego, but it doesn't get any higher stakes than that typically with that editorial.
Yeah, that's not inflating my ego. That's freaking me out. Like
a little pressure,
never,
right?
Never tell me the odds.
How do you guys have this planned out? Is this because I know Gold Goblin's a 5-issue mini? Is this a mini? Is this planned to be a maxi? How do you guys have this planned out?
Well, I mean, my understanding is that it's kind of, honestly, it's performance dependent, right? Okay. So if today goes well, and you know, I understand, like, you know, that's the market at the moment. Things, you know, things are on sort of quite a sort of tight refresh. But like, if it does well, you know, I have plans on the book going quite far ahead. I mean, these are, and this is an exaggeration, like these are characters that I enjoy kind of spending time with. Like I like checking in on them every month. So, you know, if people, you know, you know, if you like it, please tell people about it, you know, and, you know, then, you know, I'll get to sort of lean into some of these sort of more outlandish plans that I have.
You know, it's actually funny. The last time I heard that on this show was with another guy from the UK, Ram V, when he was on Swamp Thing, and he was like, "Yeah, they only gave me this many issues, but they said if it does really well, we'll get more issues." And we ordered the heck out of that thing to make sure Ram got to finish up his Swamp Thing run. And it leads me to my next question. You mentioned how Dylan plays a role.
Yes, I know Ram V.
So yes. You guys talk when you're building this, since he's the Venom guy now?
Well, we're in a studio together.
Okay.
He's like one of my best friends. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, it's not an exaggeration to say that I pretty much got the book. I mean, I think it was largely as a result. Like, I think Ram and Al Ewing, I think, like, I'm pretty much in this office because of those guys. I think they lobbied very hard. You know, there was they wanted a new symbiote book, and I think they lobbied very hard for that to be me. So yeah.
And
so yeah, we all talk, and like we all have a Slack and everything, and I've got the window open there just in case anyone wants to yell at me. But yeah. So yeah, we're all. I mean, one of the things that I wanted to do with this book, though, is because it's, you know, obviously, you know, what Ram's doing with Carnage is very distinctive. So that's hived off in its own way. But what Al's doing with Venom is, you know, very kind of steeped in kind of symbiote lore. And so one of the things that we thought it would be a good idea to do with this book is to almost give it as clean a slate as it possibly can, or as it can possibly have. So yes, absolutely. And we you can expect to see, and you have seen sort of Normie interacting with Dylan and whatnot. But one of the things that I've done with this book is establish that the symbiote, who is, he's called Rascal, and I know like some people kind of find that, but like it's a deliberately cutesy name. Like I've deliberately given him a cutesy name because like that's almost like wishful thinking on Normie's part. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I'll call him Rascal and he'll be like a little puppy. No, he's going to just eat people's faces. So, but the thing about Rascal is that he is, because he's a recombinant symbiote. He's made of a bunch of other symbiotes. He basically has no awareness of like the Hive or Null. Which is not to say that he won't come into contact with symbiotes who do, and there's a whole kind of story to be built up from that. But like at the moment, I thought it would be kind of cool to just sort of have him, off in his own sort of little corner, basically kind of not knowing what he is. So you don't necessarily have to kind of come in with a sort of deep sort of canonical awareness of like King in Black and Absolute Carnage and everything. It's very much kind of a kid and like Lassie with a psychotic alien
with this good old Rascal.
Yeah.
Well,
who
it
eats
sounds
faces.
like it's a great jumping on point too, right? I mean, if somebody didn't,
I hope so. Yeah, that was the idea. Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of recapping at the start, just because you need to bring people up to speed. But like we've tried as hard as we can to kind of have a really smooth on ramp.
That's great. You mentioned that your studio mate Ram and Al kind of helped you get onto the book or whatnot. But let me just ask you, what was that feeling like when you get, as a creator, when you get that phone call and Marvel wants you to work on a book like this? Just like to sit back and think, just as a person, as a creator, what was that feeling like for you? You've been in comics for a while, but to get to do a symbiote mainline book for they made short boxes out of this art already. Like,
yeah, I saw. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was it's hard to describe, right? Because I mean, as I mentioned, I think on the last call, right? Like, I'm a second generation reader. I mean, they're like, there's my stuff. I'm pretty into it,
Yeah.
So and like my dad taught me to read with Marvel Treasury editions, right? So it's been there my whole life, and I've done some kind of Marvel one shots, and again, like I have to say, like, credit where credit's due. That was mainly due to like Al Ewing kind of lobbying them very hard, just going, look, I want to get Alex on like an Immortal Hulk one shot, which was really kind of my kind of that was, I think, what sort of put me in some editors' minds, because that was sort of pretty well received. Time of Monsters, super proud of that. But it's kind of strange because this is something where like I've got a shorthand with like my dad, who used to kind of take me to like comic book stores, almost, I mean, pretty much before I could walk, is now going into his local comic book shop and like buying my stuff with the kind of Marvel indicia, right? It's, I mean, that aspect of it is kind of crazy, and so there's a real sort of sense of I guess kind of consummation, I guess, of vindication as well. Like, this thing that I've wanted to do since I was a kid is and again, like, I'm not counting any chickens, man. So yeah, I guess it was humbling, and there was the initial kind of moment of euphoria, and then because I'm a human being, there was the moment of kind of crippling panic because I was worried I was going to screw it up. So,
well, I'm glad to know you're like the rest of us then.
oh yeah, come on, man. Yeah, well, no, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, I think it's one of the kind of unique aspects of this industry, I think, is that there's like, you can't really put like a cigarette paper between fans and creators, right? Like, we're all part of the same sort of community. So, and we sort of cycle in and out of each all the time. So yeah, like, of course, you have your kind of fanboy moment, but then you get the weird kind of astronaut suit feeling of like, well, I'm kind of fanboying out over something like I'm doing, which is bananas. And like, hang on, like, the fanfic that I always used to do in my head is now like on a shelf somewhere. It's like, it's surreal. It's deeply, deeply surreal. I'd recommend it.
Well, no, it's great. And actually, I always ask that question because we started this show by spotlighting Kickstarter guys, independent guys.
Yeah.
Now that this show is almost 2 years old, we've seen at least two, I think maybe almost four of these guys get published through Diamond, or through somebody that's taking a chance on them. And it's so great to see that. And like you said, it's all part of the community, because all those guys, I'll tell you for sure, those guys walk in here on a weekly basis and are buying regular, Marvel and independent. And then the once a month or once every couple months that they can have their book on the shelf. I mean, I can only, we're happy for them. So I can only imagine how it feels for you guys as creators.
Well, I think like it must be one of the few industries, right, where creators probably spend a good chunk of their disposable income on the thing they're making.
Yep.
Like, I mean, I can certainly say that, like, like whatever kind of pocket money comes out of the family fund, like, I'll, can I get an Absolute Watchman? Yes, you can. Okay. Like,
and it's funny, having done this show for a lot of Kickstarter creators, there's a saying that goes around in the Kickstarter community, and I feel it to be true in all comics. It's the same $20 bill being passed around creator to creator. And it's absolutely true.
I mean, I feel that way. Like, that happens at shows the whole time. Like, you go there with a bunch of stock, and all you end up really doing is like swapping comics with people. Like, there might, some bills might change hands, but invariably, like, you'll get $10, and then you'll go back to their table and give them the $10 back.
Yep.
and it effectively it turns into some weird like feudal like barter system.
Yep.
Where like, everyone's reading amazing comics and no one's eating.
Yeah. It is great, but it's funny because this is the business we all got into. I came from working out of college and clerical work, and here I am working in the comic book store. Like, we all chose this because we love it, right?
Yeah, 100%, man.
Alex, it's been great talking about Red Goblin, but I can't let you go without talking about the other pieces that you're doing. Most recently, let's start with your other creation, which is All Against All, which is cool because you're working with Casper on this book, which we've had Casper on the show before with Homesick Pilots, and I love his art style. It works great for a book like this. But tell people what All Against All is. I know that's on issue 3 now, so you've been out for about 3 months on that one. Yeah,
I mean, the sort of top line of it, I guess, is the sort of shorthand, like the brief version is imagine like the movie Alien with the roles reversed. So basically, you've got like a bunch of aliens as the kind of crew on this ship, and the big threat, the thing that's kind of hunting them down, stalking them, and killing them, is the last human in the universe. That's basically been raised in captivity, has no idea what it is. I mean, the others, so, I mean, just to sort of like Tarzan versus aliens, I guess, would be another way of kind of putting it. But, really brutal, really violent, but also it's kind of, and I don't want to kind of put anyone off, but it's also kind of quite a personal book for me as well, because there's a lot of stuff in there about And this is all, under it's subtext, right? Like I'm not, I think it's still like, a rockin' good time, but I wanted to sort of look into sort of issues of kind of, because I think it, no matter where you sort of sit on, as regards, culture today, there's a definite sense of kind of, fragmentation. A lot of people are worried that, like there's kind of violence in the air. And so one of the things that I kind of wanted to do with this book that interested me most and that was kind of keeping me going, while you have all the kind of really kinetic stuff, and there's a lot of kind of spinal columns being ripped out and all this sort of good stuff. But the thing that I wanted to do kind of for myself to kind of keep me engaged was just sort of really try and look at, I guess, the human animal from an alien perspective, which I think is like quite I could be wrong. Like I think that's quite a healthy thing to do, is to sort of try and look at, the human animal from a kind of as cold and anthropological a kind of perspective as you possibly can. And it doesn't get much more cold and detached than like an alien, right? So we have these kind of alien protagonists that are basically looking at this human being as though it's any other specimen in any other zoo. And the kind of the conclusions that they draw about it are simultaneously like very, very wrong, but also kind of right. Like if you actually look at like how much kind of human behavior is actually driven by instinct, herd mentality, like deep sort of neurological structures that kind of conform to, fanaticism, scapegoating, all this sort of stuff. I think like it's one of those things where like it's occasionally very useful to just sort of stand away from us, like at the furthest point you can possibly think of, and go, well, like let's look at that in isolation. And like I think that's the great thing that science fiction, particularly science fiction and horror, can both do this, right? Like they allow you to sort of zero in on certain human tendencies and just like dial them up to 11 to really kind of look at them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was talking about like the other day, like Alien, what does Alien do? Well, on the one hand, okay, absolutely. It's, the best creature design of all time and it's running amok in a spaceship. But the other thing that it also does, which I think is really interesting and doesn't get mentioned often, is that like that ship, the Nostromo, has like a whole class structure. And like that movie is all about how crises disrupt class structures, right? Like Night of the Living Dead arguably does the same thing, right?
Yep. A lot of these horror ones have that kind of, if you look at it deeply, have that little mechanism in there.
Absolutely. And it's not like I know it's like, it's not polemical, right? It's not kind of coming up to you and going like, this is what these movies are about. It's like it's there if you want it. And so that with All Against All, Casper and I kind of discussed it, and like it's one of those things where like, it's kinetic, it's incredibly violent. I think it's, the proverbial kind of great night out at the movies. But like, if you want to engage with it further, like hopefully there's enough kind of meat on the bone to sort of sustain multiple readings,
Yeah, no, it sounds great. It sounds like fans of like Ridley Scott's Alien will like it, maybe some Predator fans.
Like Predator, if you're like, but I would say all of those things, Predator, Alien, RoboCop, they've all got, they're all adrenaline, that they all give you that kind of dopamine and adrenaline hit that you've kind of gone to the theater for. But they also like, they warrant, if you sit with them a little bit, they can there's another couple rooms in the house. You know what I mean?
I like it. It's like an onion, you peel it off in layers.
Like if I've done my job, that's certainly the intention.
And to come absolutely full circle as we're finishing up, a couple weeks ago, Giga is this number 5?
Yeah.
Giga number 5 came out after a little bit of a hiatus. It was the first time we met you was with Giga number 1, with
Sure.
you and your artist on the show. This is at the very early days of the show. The book
Mhm.
is back, finishing up. Tell people a little bit, if they didn't read Giga back in 2020, you know, like you said, or you said before, this was kind of at the beginning of the pandemic ending, or
Yeah.
the shutdown ending, as we will. What was Giga? I know you. I always loved it because it kind of was the kaiju stuff about the kaiju's a little bit.
Yeah.
But tell people what Giga kind of was, and where you guys are in that story.
Well, it was kind of it was very kind of bloody minded. It was a like a locked room murder mystery featuring like giant mechs. So basically, it's you have this world where these they're called Giga, or like strike engines, that were used to sort of fight this kind of huge mech war like hundreds of years ago. And the war ended for some reason, and they're now kind of lying dormant. And they haven't moved in centuries. And what's happened is people have basically, because these machines destroyed human cities, people moved into the mechs. So like you've got these whole cities that are just made of like giant robots, basically. And what happens is one of these mechs, you know, is kind of found in the middle of the forest, murdered. And it's basically a detective story where, you know, these mechs that are basically kind of venerated as like almost gods, is kind of found dead, like who done it. And yeah, like it started coming out, you know, at the beginning of the pandemic. And, you know, as with anything else, various kind of factors sort of conspired to unfortunately delay the release of our last issue. But yeah, like it's done. You know, we put a capstone on it. The trade should be coming soon. You know, Vault, bless them. You know, they were committed to kind of finishing it, saw it all the way through, and you know, yeah, it's done, and I'm very happy with it.
That's awesome. It was one of my favorite books when I first started working here. I bought all of the beautiful covers because issue 1 had so many beautiful covers. You guys had foils and David Mack and things like that. We actually still have some number 1s if anybody wants to get into Giga. As Alex said, the trade is also on its way. Alex, where can people find you? You're on social media? I know you kind of interact with fans a little bit. Where can they find you if they want to catch up with you?
Well, yeah, sorry, I've got a bizarre surname, so you know, hopefully it'll come up in a cryon or something. But yeah, I'm at Alex Paknadel on Twitter, and I mean, just it's like I'm fine. Don't get me wrong, but you know, I tend to I have a very sort of conversational kind of approach to it. So like, I mean, I should probably just use it as like a promotional bullhorn, but instead I just sort of moan about my cereal. But like. Yeah, so like I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram as Paknadelia. I chose that a long time ago. Yes, it's deeply cringe, but you know what the hell? I'll roll into it. So yeah, I mean, I'm on most platforms, I think, and I should really have a newsletter, but like I always look at those things, right, and I just kind of go, my week's not that interesting. Like, there's a lot of people who have newsletters, and they're kind of like, well, I went to Vienna for the weekend, and I'm like, well, I took out the trash, I guess.
We're all proud of you. We want to hear about that journey.
Yeah, man. Although, like, you know, I was saying to a friend the other day, like, I had like just like right before lockdown, like I had this thing where I got flown out to LA to kind of do like some TV stuff, and so I had like a couple of weeks where, you know, like I come from like a small town in England, right? And I had a couple of weeks where I was like getting like driven like to the Warner lot, to like the Warner's back lot, like every morning. And like it was literally like about a week before everything shut down. And I had a moment of like, oh man, like I'm in LA, and like I'm having like fish tacos for lunch, and I guess this is my life now. And then like literally like a week later, I was like every time I took out the garbage, I was like, I am Magellan. Like just like how quickly like your world becomes tiny, you know?
That is so true, and I think a lot of us in comics can understand that, because that time, not only were we all stuck at home, but that was a crazy time in comics. Diamond had shut down. You know, nobody release schedules had to be moved around. I mean, it was the Wild West for 2 months there in the comic industry for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of crazy. I mean, it didn't just come back either, did it? It like roared back. I mean, it was kind of nuts, like the numbers that people were kind of doing, you know. But I think it was just to kind of, because the way I think like a lot of it was relief, right? It was because, you know, there were a couple weeks, man, where it was, like, is the industry gonna die? And then
a month
I think
of no Diamond was scary.
Yeah.
You know, how does any company bounce back from a month of no profit? You know, it was scary. It was scary.
Yeah. And then people started putting out books, man, and they were kind of, there were like a few months there where it was like, you know, we were like, it was weird. It was like you were back to kind of like mid 2000s, like people were doing like Ultimates numbers.
Yeah.
It was just crazy. Yeah. But I genuinely, like, I think it was just people were so relieved to have the thing that they love back, that they were kind of coming back in droves, you know? I mean, lockdown was certainly good for that, like over here as well, I think, because kind of, you know, people were kind of, you know, any disposable income that anyone had, you know, there's a quaint notion, disposable income, but, you know, any disposable income that people had, you know, they were spending on kind of entertainment. So they were kind of, they were picking up like a ton of comics and a ton of streamers.
Yep. And a ton of trades.
Yeah, man.
It was a crazy time, and digital did well. Kickstarters did well during that time. I mean, comics in general, anything with art and pages on it was doing great, and it still is. You know, I mean, obviously things.
No. Like I think the thing I remember doing more than anything, which I hadn't done, was like I was plugging loads of gaps of like really cool, weird DC stuff from the 80s. Like that was my like lockdown fetish. Like I was picking up like runs of like, you know, like J.M. DeMatteis and Giffen's Dr. Fate, Tail Gunner Joe, Thriller, like really cool, like weird 80s DC books. Like that was my thing during lockdown. I was like, never been collected in trade, man. Like I'm just gonna, and I was, you know what I mean? Like that was what I was using to kind of keep sane. It's just like, it
was crazy. It was fun because I saw that was when I think every comic store saw a lot of people filling runs because nobody had marked up anything. Everything was still the prices it was pre-pandemic.
Yeah,
people had more time, you know, and I think that was the craziness of it all, was everybody found out they had a little bit more time, at least for that, you know, whether they were working from home or whatever was happening, people had a little bit more time. And again, now people have now figured out how to make time for their comics, but no, it's great. And it's great to see somebody that, like we saw, you know, with a book that was written pre-pandemic and was released during the pandemic to now see what you're doing now. Because the Red Goblin is awesome. All Against All is awesome. I was happy to see him on All Against All. I was like, oh my God, you know, I'm glad we got something. And then I saw your name on Red Goblin and I'm like, oh my God, so happy for him. Another friend of ours from the UK, Dan Waters, is he got a really big, it's skipping my head right now, but he got announced to write a really big book for Marvel as well, and we're so happy.
There's Loki. Like, by the way, like I'm in a studio with him as well.
Yes, so Dan is a great friend of ours. We did Homesick Pilots with him and other things, and he's done a lot of Azrael. His Azrael did really well for us, but Loki, everybody can admit, Loki's a little bit of a step above Azrael. So we're happy for him too, and you know, it's great to see people make those.
He's shown me some pages from that. You know, like it's gonna be I'm not going to say anything too, but like the stars are aligning in that kind of corner of things where I think you're going to have some very exciting people in a certain corner of the Marvel universe that I think is going to, we have an expression over in the UK, blow the doors off. I don't know whether you have it, but yeah, like that book that Dan's doing, man. Like, I mean, we kind of we kind of, because we spitball each other's plots, right? So like he was telling me his ideas for Loki over the phone, and like it's going to be really cool, man. Like he's doing stuff you kind of haven't seen before. It's going to be great.
That's so awesome. I actually got to reach out to
but
him.
Don't, but don't tell him I said that, because he'll just.
We'll tell him that you told us it was terrible. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, 100%. And yeah, and tell him I think he's got crap hair as well.
Oh man, but no, Dan's another guy I got to book for the show again. I'm so happy for him with Loki. We're happy for you with Red Goblin here, Alex.
Thank you.
And again, you're surrounded by some amazing studio mates. You know, Dan, Ram, and all those guys.
They're okay. Yeah, they're all right.
they're good. I like Ram. I hang out with him when Scott's Collectibles comes out to the conventions and everything like that. So, Alex, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insight.
No, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And guys, don't forget, Red Goblin #1 is out in stores everywhere. It is our pick of the week at the Collective. You'll get an extra stamp if you pick it up. And Alex told you everything you need to know about why you should pick it up. It's a Normie Osborn story. Even if you aren't reading Venom and Gold Goblin, you can pick this up. You should be able to enjoy it. And let's help Alex get to fill out all the story he wants to do. Let's make this sell gangbuster numbers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alex. Enjoy the rest of your day over in the UK. Thank you for giving us the time. I know the time difference is tough.
No, not at all. Not at all. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thanks ever so much for having me on again.
Absolutely. And we'll see you for the next one. You know, always let us know. We'll get you on for the next book anytime.
Count on it. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, guys.
Take it easy, Alex. So, guys, thank you so much for sticking around. We had Alex Paknadel here, writer of Red Goblin, which is new this week, All Against All, which came out they're on the 3rd issue, actually, and then Giga, which just finished. We do still have some issue 1s. And before I leave, I want to remind you all, we got the Collective Community Con happening this Saturday, 10 to 5. We're going to have 25-cent books on the sidewalk, $5 trades on the sidewalk. Global Eats food truck will be here. The Orlando Ghostbusters will be here. As of right now, they are bringing the Ecto 1B for photo ops. And then we'll have tons of creators. We'll have at least 10 creators in the building, including artist Carl Maline, Emily Ricette, Gambit Melendez, and they will be doing commissions. We do have blank sketch cards for the kiddos, free comics for the kiddos. Definitely be sure to come by. And thank you guys so much for the support. We'll see you next week.